science fans, and welcome to SHE-ensya. Do you ever wonder what's it like to be in the wonderful world of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics? Let's hear from experts, students, and aspiring STEM advocates about what it's like to be part of the wonderful world of STEM. Join us in today's episode as we talk about the history and importance of microbiology and talk to SHEroes who've turned their passion into action. We often wonder about unseen worlds beyond Earth. But did you know that there exists an unseen world with us and within us that's too small for the naked eye to see? The existence and the possibility that microorganisms existed was discussed for many centuries before their actual discovery in the 17th century. For example, the existence of unseen small living things was postulated by Jainism, which is based on Mahavira's teaching as early as the 6th century BCE. The Roman scholar Marcus Terentius Varro also published a book called Agriculture in the 1st century, which is the first known to suggest the possibility of disease spreading by yet unseen organisms. In his book, he warns against establishing houses near swamps because, according to him, there exists minute organisms that we cannot see that can enter the body through the nose and mouth and cause serious disease. Abu Ali ibn Sina or Avicenna wrote the book called The Canon of Medicine in 1020, where he hypothesized that tuberculosis and other diseases might be contagious. And then in 1546, Girolamo Fracastromo postulated that epidemic diseases are caused by seed-like organisms that are unseen, that can be passed on from one person to the next through direct or indirect contact or even across vast distances. Of course, all these early claims about the existence of microorganisms were speculative and were not based on any data or science. They were basically as good as science fiction. Microorganisms were neither proven, observed, or correctly characterized until the 17th century. And this is because, prior to then, the scientific community lacked an essential tool, which is the microscope. Anton van Leeuwenhoek was one of the first people to observe microorganisms using a microscope of his own design, and made one of the most important contributions to biology. Robert Hooke, on the other hand, was the first to use the microscope to observe living cells. In his 1665 book titled Micrographia, he wrote observations of plant cells. And before van Leeuwenhoek's discovery of microorganisms in 1675, it had been a mystery why grapes could be turned into wine, milk into cheese, or why food would spoil. Now, just to clarify, van Leeuwenhoek was not able to connect these processes to microorganisms, but what he did was to show evidence that there were living things or forms of life that were unseen by the naked eye. And together with van Leeuwenhoek's discovery, the observations of Spallanzani and Pasteur, they ended the long-held belief that life spontaneously appeared from non-living substances during the process of spoilage. Lazzaro Spallanzani was a scientist who discovered that boiling the broth would sterilize it and kill any microorganisms in it. He also discovered that new microorganisms can be introduced into broth if it was exposed to air. Louis Pasteur, on the other hand, expanded upon Spallanzani's findings by exposing boiled broths to the air in vessels that are either filtered or with accommodations to prevent dust from settling in the broth. The results of Pasteur's experiment, which was the absence of microbial growth in the broth, indicated that microorganisms came from the outside environment, perhaps carried by dust or spores, and were not spontaneously generated from the non-living things present in the broth. And this dealt a killing blow to the spontaneous generation theory and led support to the germ theory instead. Several years later, there was Ferdinand Julius Kohn, who was a German biologist whose classification of bacteria into 4 groups based on shape is still in use today. Among other things, Kohn is also remembered for being the first to show that bacillus can transform from a vegetative state to an endospore state. He made other amazing discoveries that still form the backbone of microbiology until today. And then in 1876, Robert Koch established that microbes can cause disease. He found that the blood of cattle who were infected with anthrax always had large numbers of the microorganism Bacillus anthracis. He also found that he could transmit anthrax from one animal to another, or from a broth that contains the bacteria to an uninfected animal. The results of his experimentations showed the causal link between certain microbes and diseases. And from the 1800s to the present, microbiology has made leaps and bounds and has contributed greatly to medicine, industry, and the understanding of life. Current microbiology programs currently sit at the intersection of biology, chemistry, genetics, and mathematics, and they prepare students for future professions in the food and beverage industry, the health science, and the academia. But I wonder, what could it truly be like to study the unseen? Well, let's hear from our SHEroes about their motivations for remaining steadfast in studying microbiology here in the Philippines.
Hello, science fans. I'm Dr. Esperanza Cabrera of Del Salle University, Manila, where I teach and do research in the areas of microbiology and cell and molecular biology. But my passion is really in microbiology.
Hello, science fans. I'm Llewelyn Moron, PhD. I'm a teacher, and my passion is microbiology.
To get the ball rolling, let's first find out how our SHEroes got interested in the field of STEM.
My exposure to the science world started when I was still at a very young age, probably around 6 or 7 years old. My late mom, who was working as a chemical engineer back then, would normally bring me at her workplace, and I would see her perform laboratory stuff like mixing the agents, pipetting, and all. I remember reading her laboratory manuals, which back then I didn't really understand much. And that exposure had led to my interest in science, and because at a young age I was already fascinated with discovering things, I already knew that I would end up getting a career in STEM.
My interest in science was really kindled by my very enthusiastic science teachers that made learning so fun, so interesting. And this was strengthened in my high school days because I was lucky to have challenging and stimulating science courses both in the English and Chinese classes. So you see how influential a teacher can be.
The STEM community thrives when its members come from unique backgrounds. And it's interesting how different individuals can converge in common interests. But I wonder, what led our SHEroes to specialize in the field of microbiology?
Later on, I decided that I would want to be a medical doctor, and that was why I enrolled in medical technology. And it was during my medtech internship that I fell in love, this time with microbiology. During that time, the Philippines still had the U.S. naval bases, one of which was stationed in Subic Bay, Olongapo, and it had very well-equipped laboratories. You can work very comfortably in that lab. Us medtech interns were given a lot of hands-on experiences and also the right to make decisions with the proper guidance from our section head. So that built up our confidence and also the interest in the study of these microorganisms. And allow me to say this, thank you, Manong Ben, and wherever you are, you have inspired me to go into microbiology.
I only heard of microbiology when I was already applying for an undergraduate course. And at that time, I wanted to take a course that was different from what my high school classmates were about to take. And I wanted something challenging. And microbiology sounded a very challenging course, and indeed it was. I remember when I was looking and reading the different subjects that I had to take for the course, all subjects really caught my eye, and I said to myself, okay, I'm on the right track.
The study of these unseen microorganisms is definitely intriguing, but also potentially dangerous. But the danger can either come from these organisms themselves or somewhere else. So, what could be the most difficult aspects of the journey of our SHEroes as they study the unseen?
One of the things that I find difficult when doing research that's related to microbiology in the country is that the idea of microbiology as an advancing science is not that well known to a lot of people, particularly the general public. So it's quite difficult to make them understand the importance of microbiology, like why do we need to study bacteria, viruses, and fungi? Also, the lack of access to resources has also been one of the problems that I would normally encounter. I remember I had to wait for more than 3 months to be able to perform a particular research experiment because the reagent that I needed was not readily available in the Philippines and I had to order it from abroad.
The study of microbiology is very interesting and challenging. We start off because these microorganisms are invisible entities. So you start off not seeing them. And there is always that anticipation as what they would finally turn out to be after you have done the proper processing, incubation. And you see them growing on the plates. Next, have to decide what should be my next step so that I can characterize and identify them and decide what further tests to be done. Decision making. It's not something that can just turn out to be so routine. There is never a dull moment. You will always be on your feet. There are always new things to find out. It's not boring.
Doing anything of value is certainly never easy, but it is worth all the blood, sweat, and tears. So let's hear from our SHEroes about the most fulfilling aspects of being a microbiologist.
I did not go into medicine and decided to become a teacher for so many other reasons. And I am very happy with this decision because I love my profession. So my students, both graduate and undergraduate, have been doing work in medical microbiology. But in addition to that, we also isolate microorganisms from different sources such as fermented food products from aquatic organisms, and we study them for the presence of beneficial bioactivity such as anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, antimicrobial activities that are beneficial to man. So you see, we don't just study the bad organisms, we also study the very good ones that can be beneficial to man.
Doing microbiological research is fulfilling in the sense that I can dwell more on the microorganisms that can cause diseases to humans, such as my favorite organism, the Candida albicans. I can observe this amazing fungus under the microscope and understand how this fungus colonizes and can cause infection to humans. Research is not an overnight project. It can never be done overnight. It's similar to cooking that you need to prepare the materials ahead. You need to have those research questions, but you get thrilled and excited to see the results. And lastly, by doing research, I know that in my own little way, I am able to contribute to the scientific community.
We need greater diversity in STEM, and more women in its various fields would certainly help. I believe our SHEroes have one more message to young Filipinas out there who are considering to go into the wonderful world of STEM.
My message to all young Filipinas who would want a career in STEM is to go for it and take that leap of faith. Being a STEM major will open a variety of opportunities for you after graduation. You can work in the industry, or you can go to medical school and become a doctor, or you can proceed to graduate school and be a scientist or an academician. The path is definitely not going to be easy, but you just have to stay focused, and of course you need to study hard. Learning not just by reading what's in the book, but also learning in the laboratory. And this is important for you to be able to enhance your critical thinking skills and develop an innovative mindset. And these two things are important for you to have a career in STEM.
If you were to ask me, how about the study of microorganisms in the Philippines? And I always say this, and I can tell you that after receiving the proper education, training, in the presence of the adequate laboratory facilities, materials, equipment, one can do very relevant research in microbiology in the Philippines. And so I enjoin you to pursue a career in microbiology or any field in STEM. And I'm pretty sure, let me repeat, there is never a dull moment. You will get to grow with it, love it, enjoy it.
Thank you so much to our SHEroes for sharing with us your time, your experiences, and for helping empower fellow women in the field of STEM. It truly is amazing to get a glimpse of what it's like to study the unseen world of microbiology. To our viewers, I hope you were able to learn something from our video for today. And if you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipina scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!